The duel at Gandyushima, covered in the third movie by Inagaki, probably was one of the very, very focal points of Musashi's life. It took place when he was 29. Sasaki Kojiro was a well-respected and excellent swordsman. He had a small dojo teaching the Hosokawa clan samurai swordsmanship. Kojiro was an important man because Kojiro had never been beat himself. And in this case, Musashi was not only securing his own fame, but he was proving to himself that he could do this, as was Sasaki Kojiro. Musashi was known to have knocked off the Yoshiokas. He had had a number of matches, but really nobody knew that much about him because he didn't belong to any sort of a dojo. He had no background, no lineage. So it's suspected that Kojiro really thought that Musashi would be an easy match for him. We don't know much about Kojiro's character because his life is terminated at Gandyushima, but we do know that he challenged his teacher's brother to a duel, defeated the man, and then walked away to become his own swordsman. We also know that he had perfected a technique called the Tsubame Gaeshi, which means the return of the swallow. That was indeed a deadly technique, and he was well known for this. It was bringing the sword down, and then as his opponent would kind of go for the down sword, Sasaki would actually bend down and bring the sword up into the body of his opponent. But other than those few facts, we really don't know much about Kojiro. In the Inagaki film, Musashi meets Sasaki Kojiro tangentially here and there, and Kojiro is also connected somehow with the Yoshioka school, by his own meddling perhaps, but he's there. In the fact of the matter is that Musashi never met Kojiro until that day on Gandyushima, and Sasaki Kojiro was in no way connected with the Yoshioka school. However, he was a flashy dresser. He had this very flashy sword, which everybody knew about. It was made by a famous swordsmith from 200 years before, and Musashi really didn't care how he dressed. So in a certain sense, yes, he was just the opposite of Kojiro. Kojiro based a lot on his lineage. Musashi had none. Kojiro had a dojo and wanted a dojo. Musashi had none. Kojiro dressed in a flashy manner. Musashi just dressed as he could. The Japanese have always been interested or fascinated by adauchi, which means sort of revenge fights. And while this wasn't a revenge fight, everybody saw it as a sort of, two great masters of the sword, seeing which one is the most, is the better. And Gandyushima was, of course, very dramatic. It was out on this little island. And they had to row out to the island, and Musashi showed up late and used all of his psychological techniques on Kojiro. Musashi said, "We don't twist ourselves, we twist our opponents." So yes, psychology was extremely important to Musashi, far more than strength, far more than technique. Deception was a part of battle, and it's difficult perhaps to square it with this idea of honor. But Musashi said in his book, you don't go into a fight to leave your sword uselessly at your side. You go in to win. It brought no honor to your feudal lord for you to lose a fight. It brought no honor to you to lose a fight. Now, I assume that there are certain unhonorable things that you would not do, such as wait until the guy stumbled on a rock and fell down. You wouldn't hit him when he was down. In kendo today, when you practice kendo, you make your strokes hitting straight into the helmet of the other man. If the opponent turns around and you strike at the back of his helmet, you're out of the match. That is dishonorable. Tradition says that Musashi carved an oar on his way over to Gandyushima. This would seem to be what happened. Now, in part, this may have been yet another technique to put Sasaki Kojiro off, since Kojiro really felt that the sword was the soul of the samurai, and his sword had this long lineage, and it was a wonderful sword. And he probably wondered, what kind of sword is Musashi going to have? And when he sees him with a wooden sword, he would have perhaps been even more irate that somebody would have come at him with something that had no lineage. On the other hand, Musashi knew about the length of Kojiro's sword. And when he carved this sword, it was about 1.5 inches longer than Kojiro's. But he had used wooden swords most of his life. He met most of his opponents with a wooden sword. This one just happened to be quite a bit bigger, quite a bit heavier. I have a replica of the sword. It's extremely heavy, and it would have taken a man with pretty big shoulders to have maneuvered this sword, especially in a very fast technique and a sure technique. There are two slightly different versions of this fight on Ganryushima. It's universally understood. The killing blow was delivered by the wooden sword. In the one theory, we have him actually sort of braining Sasaki Kojiro and killing him with the wooden sword stroke to the head. With the other, we have him hitting him on the head, knocking him down and nearly out, but then delivering the second blow to his chest and killing him there. But both were with the wooden sword. It was not with the second sword. That was possibly a matter of style for Inagaki to kind of show Musashi drawing his second sword at the same time. The tear in Musashi's eye as he leaves Ganryushima may be indicative of a few things. In the generation before Musashi, there were two feudal lords who constantly fought, and sometimes one would win and sometimes the other would win. But the one feudal lord was suspected to be the man who was going to unite Japan and who was going to win. He was unexpectedly shot and killed, or possibly died of a quick illness while investing a castle. And his rival feudal lord, the man whom he fought time after time, is said to have shed deep tears over this. And when he was asked by his vassals, "What are you doing? This man is dead. Now we can go ahead." The man said, "My very best rival is now dead. How will I ever fight another great battle? My best rival is now gone." Musashi may have come to a realization like that himself when he killed Kojiro. The duel on this island was the most famous of Musashi's duels. He would continue to have duels, but they were often at the request of a feudal lord wanting to see Musashi's style. And they usually wound up with Musashi leading his opponent around the dojo, just showing him that whatever he did was not going to have any effect whatsoever. After Ganryushima, he continued to travel, but eventually he wound up as a guest, not as a samurai, not as someone who served that lord, first in Kokura and then finally in Kumamoto, and it was in Kumamoto where he died. Miyamoto Musashi, at the end of his life, wrote a book called the Gorin no Sho, which we translate as the Book of Five Rings. This was a book that he was going to leave to his few disciples as a sort of an outline of how they should practice, how they should remember the techniques that he taught them, and really how to have their mind set right. The sword was Musashi's art, and when you make the mind right for the sword, you're making the mind right for every art. When you have learned to use the mind correctly in drawing your sword, in using a certain technique, you'll also have the mind correct for techniques in calligraphy, in painting, in flower arranging. It becomes really a matter of the mind. This is why he said, practice your sword technique, and once you have gotten the sword down, you will be able to master any of the arts.